Welcome back to the Call on Our Shot podcast. I'm Austin. I'm joined by Logan. We're back for the 20th installment. So we appreciate all you guys for showing the love. It's the weekly podcast every single Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Logan, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm so excited for playoff football. I think this is going to be honestly one of our best episodes of this podcast yet. I'm so excited to talk about everything. We just finished the end of the college football regular season and playoffs. That was so fun. So I'm just really excited to dive right into it.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about today. We're going to obviously do our normal Week 18 takeaways, the final week of the regular season in the NFL, talk about the College Football National Championship, answer all your guys' questions that you sent to us in my most recent NBA video. I appreciate all you guys for tuning in. If you are new to the channel, you're just stumbled upon the podcast, consider clicking that subscribe button down below. We're less than 400 subscribers away from 20,000, which is ridiculous, but we appreciate all the people hitting that subscribe button. Also, click a like too. And if you want to be an extra OG, have a special place in our heart, go download the podcast and give us a good rating wherever you may do that. Our last note, weekly live stream is tonight, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Come show out if you're watching this on Wednesday. We'll appreciate you. But Logan, man, what to talk about? There's so much that we can cover. I mean, not just NFL related. I mean, we could talk about Klay Thompson returning, which is a big, monumental thing in the NFL, or NBA. But man, I think we should lead it off with talking about the final week of the regular season. And I want you to start with your favorite takeaway or biggest takeaway from this final week as we head into the playoffs. Then we'll obviously talk about every single playoff matchup later on in the podcast.
So on paper, a lot of these matchups to me weren't very sexy. I was like, this is just a weird week of football. I'm not excited to sit down and blob out and
you
watch.
Didn't want to watch the Giants versus Washington football team?
No, see, there were a few games that immediately I knew not a second of viewership would come from me. But truthfully, a lot of the games were really close. A lot of the games had come down to the wire finishes, but no greater finish than the game of the year, Las Vegas versus the Chargers. What an absolute game. The internet would have went incredibly, insane. It would have been mayhem if those two teams would have ended in a tie, and Vegas would have lost the shirts off their back if it would have tied.
Dude, they would have lost. I don't know the exact calculations. I think they were going to lose over like $1 billion.
Yes, I did see that.
An exaggeration. I mean, there were so many people that placed the Colts money line or Jags money line, and then the tie in that game. And
I know it would have been an insane winner for the public, but you just simply know that Vegas was not going to allow that to happen. They called the phantom timeout. Yeah, they were in Brandon Staley's pocket. They told him to call that timeout, but whatever. We talked about is the NFL rigged, several weeks back, but. It's not rigged, but there's also some things that make you go sometimes. But no, it was a really amazing game. I love games that end past midnight on the East Coast and keep me up another half hour because the adrenaline rush. That is exactly what happened. Going to work Monday morning, it sucked because I was like, I got no sleep from that game. But that's what we love about Sunday Night Football. We don't want to watch a blowout. We don't want to watch these uncompetitive games. But with these two teams win and in or tie and in, I love seeing the desperation. And look, what you and I talked about it last week. I told you that Raiders team with when they lost Gruden, a lot of adversity overcome. Kudos to the Raiders for getting in the playoffs. What a big win for them.
Yeah, we'll talk about their matchup this weekend on Saturday against the Bengals in a little bit. But you're right, that game was ridiculous. And we were texting throughout the whole overtime. I didn't get to watch the beginning of the game, and truthfully, I'm not even mad. I got to catch the end of the third and then the fourth and overtime, and it was a ridiculous game. Now, I don't know if I was rooting for a tie or not, and I know people can go into all like the timeouts and stuff like that. I think that wouldn't have changed the outcome potentially. Maybe it would have. Either way, it was one of the craziest games I remember just watching. And you're right, it's hard to go to sleep after those sort of games. You just you sit up, you're just like, your heart's going, and you're not even part of the game, and you might not even have any money on the game either. But I imagine there was a lot of people out there that had that tie plus the Jags money line. And I can't imagine how hard it was to sleep that night. But that was my biggest takeaway from Week 18. What a collapse from the Indianapolis Colts, a team that I've been topping, taking my hat off. Like, this team has a chance to make a run. And then just to lay an absolute egg against your Raiders that last week. I give them your Raiders, but you're a big Raiders guy. And then the absolute egg against the Jags, which, I mean, I guess it was, you could have looked at it. And I feel bad for all Colts fans. If you can skip forward a couple minutes until you see the slider on the bottom change, if you don't want to go through PTSD. But yeah, it just was such a disappointing show. I mean, it really just came back to the, what is Carson Wentz and what is he going to be for the future of this Colts team? Now, they obviously already invested a first round pick now because, he played enough snaps to turn that second into a first. But Carson Wentz looked bad the last 2 games. And, you've come on the podcast, you've said, Carson Wentz has his moments. He has his moments both ways. Some games he just plays super well, like he did against the Cardinals, making throws. And then other games just plays terrible. And that was what it was against the Jaguars. Curious what your thoughts were that game, because that was, I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, you're 15-point favorites, and the Jags they hit you with the Uno reverse card because they covered the 14.5 points themselves, right? 26-11 or whatever. Ridiculous.
Shout out Jags. Not only did you win the game against the division rival, gave them the ultimate middle finger, keeping them out of the playoffs, but they also secured the first overall pick doing so. That doesn't happen all too often. But truthfully, the story is all about the Colts. The Colts with one of the biggest letdowns of the past several years, because all you had to do was beat a hapless Jaguars team, a 2-win team. If they would have come out and they would have established Jonathan Taylor more and would have stepped on their throat, I believe that game would have been a whole lot different. No, they got cute. How many times do I talk about in the NFL? A lot more games are lost than won. That game was simply lost from the Colts. They just said, well, Carson Wentz, go out and be the superhero. Why though? Why, when Jonathan Taylor has worked for you all year, is this the time that you turn to Carson Wentz and say, nope, you lead us to the promised land? No, that's not how it works. Honestly, the Colts kind of deserve to lose in that fashion. Now, Trevor Lawrence, shout out Trevor Lawrence. He made some plays and he gave a little bit of hope for, the Jaguars fan base. It was a really rough season for the Jags, but he kind of showed, flashes of brilliance. And I mean, that Colts offense was just brutal. I mean, again, we're not Colts fans on here, but I can't imagine anything more maddening than just watching Carson Wentz just, turn around and just chuck it up and just hapless interceptions. You cannot turn the ball over like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. They really, and I do have to give the Jags some credit because the Colts did lose that game, but the Jags also won that game, and they played the Colts tough a couple weeks back prior when the game was like 17-23 or something like that. That was in Indianapolis. They had all the clown noses in the stands, and you gotta, as a Jags fan, I think there's a reason to be optimistic. You saw Trevor Lawrence probably play arguably his best game of his young career in the final, game. You got to see some progression. He obviously made a lot of errors throughout his season, throwing 17 interceptions. But still, it was, if you're a Jags fan, you got to be optimistic. You got the number 1 pick. You're right. You just screwed over one of your rivals in your own division. And, you got to be optimistic because they have some, young pieces on that team. And we'll see what they do next year, what they do with the number 1 overall pick. I imagine they address something on the defensive side, but we'll see. But you're right. Mm-hmm. That was crazy. And what also was crazy is how many coaches have been let go. And that's what we're going to talk about next, because we want to talk about the best landing spot for that. You guys, what you would think, Logan, if you were like an NFL head coach that was just fired, or, one on the street that's looking for a job, what your future your favorite team would be. Now, there are a ton of options open at the moment. Now, you got the Giants. They got a head coach and GM opening. Got the Bears, got the Vikings, both with head coach and GM openings. Then you got the Dolphins, the Broncos, the Jaguars, and then the Raiders, which the Raiders is a little bit skeptical. Technically, they still have their interim coach, Fasaccia. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but what would be your preferred landing spot if you were a coach? Because I mean, we need to move past the Colts thing. They're in the past. They're going to be sitting on the couch just like all of us Jets and Panthers fans. We'll be right there with you.
Yeah, no. So looking at the list, right? To me, there's some L's on this list, right? Giants, I want no part of. Broncos, not really. They lack an identity. But there's a couple that do stick out to me. A close second would have been Dolphins. Dolphins is a really interesting spot. A lot of young talent there. But you know what? I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings simply because, I mean, you've got the offensive side of the ball pretty well addressed. You've got Jefferson, Thielen, you've got Dalvin Cook when he can stay healthy. So offense, check that off. Kirk Cousins, say what you want about him. He's in the top half tier of quarterback. So he's decent, he's serviceable, he's enough to win you the games, at least bare minimum, making the playoffs. And what's also really compelling about the Vikings job is the division they play in. Because, you got to look at, so you're playing the Lions twice a year. You love to see that. You're playing the Bears twice a year. The Bears are in a rebuilding phase, you'd think. And then you play the Packers twice a year. And the Packers could be a really interesting team depending on what happens this year. Is Aaron Rodgers returning, right? So the Packers might, right? I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are leaving, but who knows, right? If it truly is the last dance, can the Minnesota Vikings take that torch, and take the division? Absolutely. It's a very attractive job for me. And that's why I would go ahead and they play in a really nice dome too, right? Don't worry about the weather in Minnesota.
Aesthetics.
Yeah, it's one of those. And they've got an amazing fan base too, right? Shout out Viking fans. They're kind of crazy. I love that horn that always goes off in their stadium. But the Vikings are due. They're one of those teams that just had a disappointing season, but they are due an upward trend.
Yeah, I like the pick. You're right. There are a couple teams on this list that I would definitely avoid. The Giants, I don't really. They do have two, I believe, top 10 picks, if I'm not mistaken, just like my Jets. So we'll see what they do in the draft. But I'm going to lean towards a team in the same division as the Vikings. That's going to be the Chicago Bears. Now, we obviously know they finally got rid of Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, and there's been a lot of question marks for those guys to be fired for a long, long time. And so I think there's reason for optimism here because you have this potential guy in Justin Fields that has shown glimpses. He's shown when the lights are the brightest, he does normally step up and play pretty well. And you can't necessarily blame him a whole lot because you saw Matt Nagy calling terrible play calls for him. And the team looked better with Andy Dalton, but that's just because Andy Dalton would take a bunch of checkdowns. And maybe that's, Justin Fields kind of learning the game and learning more. You don't have to force tons of throws. But very similar to a team like the Vikings, which I actually really like the pick because if you think about the NFL and, there's really not a huge difference between half the teams. And you think about a Vikings team that, if the ball bounced their way, they could easily be in the playoffs. I mean, this is a team that lost and likes to be in close score games. I don't know if they set the record or how many consecutive one-score games they were in. I think it was 10 at one point, and they definitely didn't have a good record in those. So I think a team like the Bears, for the same exact reasons you like the Vikings, is because, we don't know what's going to happen to Aaron Rodgers. He could leave, and then Denver Broncos, which we're not really talking about much here, Broncos could suddenly be, the best opportunity here. And you can see they're interviewing the Packers head coaches, like their QB coach, and I think their defensive coordinator or something like that. Yeah, I go, okay, we know what you're doing. But I like the Bears here because I think they have some talent. Now they're likely to lose Allen Robinson, but we saw Darnell Mooney step up in the final week of the season. Cole Kmet's a decent tight end. David Montgomery pretty solid. And they had I can't think of his name off the top of my head. What is his name? The running back, Khalil Herbert. He was pretty solid too. So they have some useful pieces. Khalil Mack still on defense. Still some, decent players that I think they can put together a squad. But I think if Aaron Rodgers does leave, this division completely wide open. We haven't seen anything out of Jordan Love that we necessarily love. No pun intended. And the Vikings, who knows what happens to Kirk Cousins? I don't know how many more years he has on his contract. I can't imagine too many. I haven't looked at his contract, but you could see them move on to something different. Who knows what happens in this division, but it could be wide open depending on what happens to Rodgers. And I just like the Bears. I think Justin Fields, I can invest in that guy. And I'll ride with the Bears as my favorite head coaching spot. And plus, you got those fans that are always rowdy, and they're not, they expect a lot out of you, but they're still going to be there to show up to all your games, regardless of if it's freezing outside.
It's true. Bears fans are a different breed. I mean, the Vikings get the luxury of playing in a dome. Out in Chicago, those fans are something different.
They're true.
Chicago is due an offensive-minded coach that can finally, put up some points, right? We've seen glimpses from Chicago, but you know what? Justin Fields could be the answer. I think with the right coaching job, this could be a team that's back on the upward trend. The NFC North is a really interesting division, as we kind of talked about, just now. I mean, this could change in an instant if Aaron Rodgers does leave. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, and so with that, we're going to move on, and we're just to get to your questions in a second. We're actually going to include one of your questions in this because we're going to talk about the national championship game, one of the best games we've seen in a hot minute for the national championship game. Obviously, a rematch, Alabama versus Georgia. And we had a question from one of our subscribers, Mark, and we appreciate you for asking this. Now, if you watched Logan's video, which I appreciate, I think it got over 7,000 views. So shout out to you guys for tuning in. Logan had Georgia minus 2.5, a 2-unit play. And Mark's question was, which GIF best describes your reaction as you saw? You were getting blasted in the comments. People were saying, never bet against Saban. Don't ever do it. That Bama money line kind of thing. So then you saw Georgia step up and win that game, obviously cover for you, cash the 2-unit play. So which GIF best describes your reaction at the end of that game?
Yeah, well, shout out to the haters. I mean, that's nothing new. I've dealt with it pretty much all picks videos I do. I get some not so nice people in there, but no, truthfully, I understood the argument against my pick was Alabama's the proven winner. They've done it. But my whole argument was Georgia is different this year. They're a team on a mission. And you know what? Watching that game, to answer the question, I felt like the Kermit sipping the tea GIF. where he's sitting back in the chair, just sipping it. Just minding my own business because I told you what was going to happen. That's why if you watch my video, I told you what was going to happen. I said, you get the run game involved, you get Cook. What turned the game when Georgia said, let's get Cook more involved, and he had the big run, and that's kind of when the game flipped. I mean, you look at Georgia's performance. I was extremely impressed. Stetson Bennett had some not so good moments, and he had me nervous. He had anybody who had Georgia nervous. I mean, I got 2 units on the line. I got a lot of skin on this game. Normally I'm not a 2-unit better, but I mean, you look at it and it was just one of those games that Georgia finally overcame their demons. And if not now, then never for Georgia. Pretty much, this was one of the strongest teams they ever had, and it felt nice to be validated by Georgia just going out there and proving all of the YouTube hate that I got. It silenced them for they'll be back. They'll be back during baseball season, but
absolutely.
You know what?
Silence them.
Get the pitchforks and torches ready. I'm ready. Coming for you, Logan. And my own dad called me a fool for picking against Alabama too. I was like, excuse me, what is this? So I got hate from every angle in this. Let's just put that out there.
I respect that, Jeff, because I mean, at the beginning of the game, after the first quarter, we were texting. It was like, I don't love the way Stetson Bennett started.
I was nervous.
I know we joked about it, but I still do feel like I'm Stetson Bennett at QB. He looks very similar to myself and has a very similar build to me. Not necessarily. If I were to be in high school right now and I were to be recruited, I doubt I'd get a lot of offers. I'd probably be a walk-on just like him. No shade to myself, but man, he showed up, and when the lights were the brightest, when he needed to make plays, he made plays. So shout out to Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
Unreal. We'll see. I don't really know what his future is, but you got to give some props to a guy that's a walk-on QB, a guy that really was doubted over the last 37 days since the SEC championship. People expected them to beat Michigan, but people were like, all right, you did it against Michigan. Now do it against Bama, a team you just struggled against. And so he stepped up and he played super well. So a great, warm spot in your heart for a guy that, you got to root for. And so I was really happy for you to cash that 2-unit play. And it was one of the better games that I remember. And that pick 6 was just,
I know. Wasn't that nice? That was a nice finish. Now I hate Georgia. You see the Gator behind me. I hate Georgia. Seeing a rival win the national title like that, but it feels good for them. They were due. It was one of those kind of feel good stories, at least on Stetson Bennett's side.
Yeah, I agree. So let's move on into a couple more questions. We got about 3 or 4, and then we'll get into our week. Well, the playoffs. We'll talk about every single matchup, and the first one is actually a different one. We're going to switch topics. It's going to be about. We're getting a question from Hello Go. We appreciate you for submitting it in my comments. And he asked, who came up with the name Calling Our Shot and what gave us the idea of making a YouTube channel? And is there someone that I look up or that we look up to? So I kind of tackle this one. So I feel like earlier on, I was brainstorming. I feel like I pioneered the YouTube channel, but then we obviously, I wanted you to be involved with it. And that's when you started doing the baseball picks, and which was really only a couple months after I really started, doing videos. But I was trying to think of a name that, I think I had a couple different options. I don't remember what they were because this was, a year and a half or so ago. I was trying to think of something. I was like, you can call your shot. And then I was like, calling your shot. And then I wanted to involve more of the community aspect. So that's why I decided on Calling Our Shot. I wouldn't change the name for anything. I think it's an awesome name. You can comment on it in a second, but yeah, I thought it was a really cool name, and I'm kind of happy where I couldn't imagine where the community is at the moment, almost at 20,000 subscribers. What gave me the idea of making a YouTube channel, and maybe you can touch on making your YouTube videos, and maybe if there's someone that you look up to or watch in the community. But I don't know. It was just kind of like I felt like there was a lot of need and a demand for these sort of YouTube videos, whether it be the podcast, whether it be sports betting picks or whatnot. I felt like the overall crowd was dominated by, an older generation. And that's no disrespect to all those older channels, but I felt like they needed like a new face, a new, some energy, someone that understands like the memes of the college football or the NBA world, and just be able to have fun while also giving you informational picks. And so I'm glad we've sort of been able to kind of combine that all into one, whether that be through long shot parlays or the nerfy bets that you do or whatever it may be. I think it's what we have kind of culminated, you and I together, has been something that, you know, we like to give out our best picks, but we also like to have fun and, you know, be a community aspect. That's why it's calling our shot. It's not calling your shot. It's calling our shot. We're all trying to beat the books together. We're all positive community. And so those are kind of my thoughts. I want you to kind of tackle this question and give your thoughts.
First of all, I remembered the day you picked the name because you and I were playing Xbox together, and we were just sitting there brainstorming names, and I'm like, it has to be some sort of sports pun, and we were just kind of going through things, and when you're like calling our shot, I was like, yeah, that's it, that's the one, and we kind of knew it. So I love the name too because it does include that community aspect, and I think that's really where we're different than a lot of those other pages. Like, you know what, if you know, talking about the other, there's a million, anyone can go start, you know, a sports picks and sports betting. They can go make a pay for picks business model. I mean, respect the hustle, right? However you want to make your money, you do you. But at the end of the day, I think what you and I have really geared this channel to is more the community, right? When I started doing those baseball picks, you know, we had Nerfy Nation, right? Nerfy Nation, we all stood up, we all got hyped for the no-run first inning bets in baseball, and it was a really fun time. And then we got the Discord going. The Discord is just always popping. It's one of the more fun places to be when you're sports betting, because truthfully, I mean, I know you feel the exact same way. If you're watching a game, maybe with your girlfriend, maybe with your wife and a significant other, you can turn over to them and say, honey, I'm winning so much money, but they don't care. Like, but in the people in the Discord will be happy for you. People in the Discord will get excited for you. And that's the community aspect of it. It's really fun. I've met a lot of great people through this Calling Our Shot community, through this YouTube channel. And it's been a really, you know, waking up and doing these videos early, that sucks, right? I mean, no doubt about it. But really, when I'm looking at the camera and when we're putting in this time, I do think of the community. I think of how fun it is seeing all the comments and the engagement.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another thing that I think that we try to set ourselves apart from is that community feel. You know, that if you comment on my NBA best bets video, or really any of our videos, a podcast or anything like that, we're gonna try to respond to every single comment that we get. It can even be hate for all we care. Like, we know people are gonna disagree on picks that we give, and that's perfectly fine. Honestly, I'd rather people disagree with the pick than just follow blindly and just, you know, not care what happens, this kind of thing, and then get angry after the fact. I'd rather people be like, you know what, here's a differing viewpoint. Here's my thoughts, and as long as you do it cordially, maybe that may be a little bit different. But still, I think, you know, you're right with the Discord and with everything that we've kind of built together and the different things that we have that kind of makes it that community aspect feel. And we've met some of our subscribers in real life, which is crazy. And I'm sure we'll maybe do some meetups or something, you know, later on in the future as we continue to grow and, you know, kind of give back more and more to the community. But you're right. It's been a crazy run. And I say this like we've been doing it for years and years. We're less than a year in, so that's kind of ridiculous. Right around that year. I mean, technically our year mark was back in November, but really we didn't start, you know, cranking out the content until really a month from today. So I appreciate everyone that has joined the community. Sure. We're closing on 20,000. We got some big plans at 25,000. We're excited for you guys to see them. And to answer this last question, is there someone I look up to? Not necessarily. I definitely look at watch a bunch of different YouTube videos, not necessarily, you know, sports betting picks, more, you know, different sort of maybe lifestyle things or just, you know, content I enjoy watching. So there's not really necessarily a ton of people that I look up to, but there are people that I look for inspiration and different channels that are doing things different. So there's even sports betting picks channels in our community. And that's what I think the really cool thing is, that I feel like there are several channels out there that have watched our videos and that's inspired them to make their own channel. And so I think that's one of the coolest things, because there's specific channels out there that I don't necessarily need a name off the top of my head, but I know that they probably watched our videos and maybe they wanted to get in and start doing their own thing. Because like I said, we haven't even been doing, I haven't done NBA picks videos for a whole year until a month from today. I think my first one was February 12th. So, you know, if you ever are in the mood to, you know, kind of launch a new career or try to launch a new hobby, I definitely would recommend it to anyone, as long as, you know, you're personable, you communicate with everyone, and that you're entertaining. I think a lot of people will come to support your channel.
Of course. Yeah, no, and that really is what it's about. I mean, it's about, you can sit up here and you can give picks and you can straight up sell bad information. I'm not even going to lie to you. I sold really bad information at the end of baseball season, but it was really heartwarming to see a lot of people being like, Logan, come back. Logan, we missed the videos. And like, I needed a mental health break, truthfully. But like, I mean, it was really cool, like, to see that aspect of it, because that once again reaffirms the whole, people like us, people like, the community, people like commenting on things, right? That's the coolest thing. I do enjoy, you do a lot of community engagement on the comments. That's why, your videos have hundreds of comments. It's great. And we encourage that, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So let's start getting into some more football talk. No more softy, soft, heartwarming stuff. We're going to talk about a question from Junior, and then we're going to get into playoffs. And he was asking, is being the number 1 or 2 draft pick a bad thing for your NFL career? And he had some more, thoughts about like Trevor Lawrence, for example. And I want to hear your thoughts, because do you think, like, because you more often than not you're being drafted into a bad situation, probably not with a lot of good players around you. So do you think that impacts your career rather than dropping to like 10 to 12, or what is your kind of thought process? Because I think the best example could be a guy like Trevor Lawrence versus Mac Jones this year.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, look, it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because, you're identified as the best overall talent in the draft. So you're like, obviously you're put on a pedestal, but with that pedestal comes expectations that these rookies don't live up to. Simply, they're put on bad teams. They're put on teams with no offensive lines, running for their life, limited weapons, and coaching staffs that change every other year, right? And we've seen it enough with the Cleveland Browns. Even look at what the Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield is a really good example of this, because Baker Mayfield, he put the expectations on himself, with a lot of what he said. But again, going back to being the number 1 overall pick, no, if you had a choice, I guess, of being the number 1 overall pick, spotlight on you, maybe you're selfish, maybe a more narcissistic type player to actually want that expectations. But yeah, I'm more myself shying out of that.
Yeah, I feel like my personal opinion is, if I were a college athlete, I'd always want to be the number 1 pick, whether that's in the NFL or the NBA or any sport. I'd always want to be that person because, I feel like as an athlete, you have to have some sort of self confidence and some sort of, ego. And that's not necessarily saying that they're egomaniacs or that they're full of themselves, but I think to be at that level, you got to have some sort of, moxie,
Yeah.
some sort of, I'm the best and I want to be the best. And I think so those best players, they don't want to be drafted necessarily. Sure, it would be nice to be drafted into the Patriots system like Mac Jones and be gifted everything, but then your whole career, people are going to be kind of like, well, did you really earn it? And so a guy like Trevor Lawrence, imagine if he turns this program around, really starts playing super well. A lot of that success is going to be attributed to him, and he's going to live up to those expectations. Very similar to, a guy like LeBron James. And I know that's like one of the best NBA players of all time, but he went to a terrible team in the Cavaliers. They were really bad, and he turned around that franchise. And now everyone looks at him as, the Cleveland Cavaliers fans like absolutely adore him. And granted, he did grow up right next to the stadium, but I think if you can be the number 1 or 2 pick, I'd always want to choose that over anything else, because sure, those expectations are going to be there, but I'd rather have a lot of lofty expectations and try my best and work as hard as I can to reach those, rather than, have mediocre expectations, not have any pressure on myself. Because sometimes I think, having pressure on yourself is going to make you play or perform to your best of your abilities. And sometimes if you're gifted everything, you're just not going to end up turning out too well. And we've seen that happen to, quarterbacks in the NFL that get drafted later on in the drafts and things of that nature.
No, it's really solid, a really solid, take on your part. But I mean, I think you just kind of differentiated between even the NBA and the NFL, right? Being the number 1 overall pick in the NBA, you can turn a franchise around relatively quickly. I mean, because basketball is a team sport, but there's not as many players that influence the game as in football. So I mean, it goes to show you. I mean, an NBA first overall pick, yeah, they can really impact, and maybe the expectations aren't as high for them. But in the NFL, everyone's expecting one player to be the difference in a game where there's 11 players on each side of the ball. That's usually unrealistic, and that's usually where the expectations fall short there.
I guess I can understand and agree with you on that. Now, let's move in, start talking about some playoffs, and we're going to talk about a question kind of betting related. And it's from Witty. I think that's how I pronounce his name. Always showing love to us on Twitter. So I appreciate him. But he asked, what is your strategy going into playoff weekend? So talking about these playoff games, we'll obviously give our picks in a second. And then do you look more towards underdogs, looking for value plays? Or are you looking for players that, have performed, up their play in the playoffs? What is your kind of takeaway when you're kind of looking through the books and trying to find which teams you want to bet on?
Yeah, well, first of all, shout out I love all these questions, first of all. I mean,
Yeah, we
these are
appreciate it. I'm gonna start
yeah,
every single Tuesday
yeah.
on my NBA video saying, "Drop your questions, we'll answer them." So,
Yeah,
I appreciate all the people that
keep them
dropped their
coming,
questions.
guys. These are really fun to talk about because I read a question like this and I'm like, yeah, what is my betting strategy going into the playoffs? So like, how am I going to make the most of this opportunity? Yeah, you know what? Underdogs are intriguing because I mean, in the NFL playoffs, really anything can happen. And what I'm looking for is teams that finish the regular season really well. Teams like the Bengals and the Raiders, I mean, they play each other, but both those teams are really hot. Those have what it takes to make those playoffs runs. Football, is really momentum driven. That's why you see some teams that rest their starters and finish the end of the season kind of sluggish. In the playoffs, sometimes it takes them a little bit to warm up. That's why maybe in these games, maybe a first half bet is in order, right? Maybe just something to look at. I don't have any lines in front of me Tuesday when we're recording this, but maybe you pick an underdog first half spread line just because you're like, hey, maybe they catch the higher seed nap and maybe they're going to play, excited, inspired football for this.
Yeah, I can kind of concur with that point. When I'm looking at it, and I definitely have more notes on my NBA playoff betting, and we'll get into that when we get to the NBA playoffs because I feel like last year we really struggled in the playoffs, and I felt like everything kind of switched in the playoffs in terms of what we were grown to expect. But for the NFL, it's tricky. Yeah, you're right. You kind of want to ride some momentum, but some teams can also step up and just kind of flip the switch and just become that team you've seen all season long. So we got some exciting matchups this weekend, a lot of really cool ones that we've pretty much already seen a lot of these matchups already this season. But I think what I'm looking for is I'm looking for some value, but I don't want to lay a ton of points because we don't see a lot of blowouts in the NFL, and especially in the playoffs. You got teams playing as hard as they possibly can, win or go home. So we'll talk about, we got a 112.5 point spread that we'll talk about in a little bit. But normally I think all the players normally still play to their caliber. If you think about an NFL team, what are they going to do in the playoffs? So they're not going to give the ball to their best players. No, they're going to force the ball into their best players' hands to make plays. So maybe you're looking at maybe some attempts, some rushing attempts of things of that nature for some of these teams. But either way, it's there's a lot you can look into. Still got to dive into these lines and kind of find the best leans and edges that I can. But I'm looking towards underdogs and probably more so some home teams if I can, if I don't have to lay it too many points. But as I look at this, every single home team is a favorite.
Yeah, I mean, as it should be. Home field advantage is big in the NFL playoffs, but hopefully you can find some edges with the props. I mean, that's what you're known for, and I'm excited definitely to watch your videos to see what player props you are able to find for the playoffs. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. We'll see exactly what type of content I have. Probably a video separately for Saturday, separate for Sunday, and one probably for Monday. Because, yes, we have Monday night football this week. But let's
Wild.
start with the first matchup.
Yeah.
Raiders versus Bengals, Saturday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. Bengals 5.5 point favorites, over under 49. And I put on our show card that this matchup sucks. And what I mean by that
I
is that
hate
I
you.
hate that these two teams are playing each other because these
That
are two
okay.
teams that I absolutely love. And you're right. We
Yes.
could talk about the Bengals. I mean, this is a team that's up and coming with a lot of this young talent, a team that finally makes the playoffs. I don't know the last time they won a playoff game, but they finally make the playoffs, and this is a team a lot of people have high hopes for. They won the AFC North, and this is a team that everyone is just like, with the Bengals, they could make a run here, and they expect the Bengals not only be good today, but be good for the next 10 plus years with Joe Burrow at QB,
Mhm.
Jamar Chase, and all those guys. On the other side, you have a Raiders team that, how the heck can I root against the Raiders after what they just did? They won that game, and then all the turmoil, all the off the field issues, all firing Gruden, every single thing you could name that could go wrong in their season, it went wrong, and they still persevered. They still made the playoffs, and they have a chance to move on in the wild card weekend to the divisional round. And I think that just as a kudos to Rich Bisaccia, or how do you pronounce, what's his name? I don't remember his
Rich
exact name.
Bisaccia. Yeah, you had it.
Um,
Yeah.
so just go give him a round of applause because, man, that guy has had an absolutely great coaching, and you can see the players just rally around him. Whether it's
Mhm.
Max Crosby, Derek Carr, one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL, not just because of how he performs on the field, but super great guy off the field. So,
Yeah.
man, I'm curious. I don't even want to pick this game out of respect for both teams.
You know what? I'm looking at this one spread, 5.5 right now. I'm curious to see what the betting public does. Do they bet up the Bengals a little bit? Does it go to minus, 6 maybe? Potentially, right? The Bengals are a hard team to bet against. Here's why. Because, they're kind of like the Kansas City Chiefs. They get up real quick. The game could be ugly, especially for the Raiders. Raiders are one of those teams that I don't necessarily trust Carr playing from behind. I mean, he's a good quarterback, but he's one of those quarterbacks that it's okay when the game's in a 1-score. But if it's a 2-score and they're trailing a little bit, that's just not really exactly how they're built. They love to run the ball with Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs will be the key in this one. And with that being said, I'm going to go Raiders plus 5.5. I just love what they've been doing with Josh Jacobs and Hunter Renfrow. How can we not talk about Hunter Renfrow? First of all, I mean, if you're playing fantasy football, you know Hunter Renfrow's name by now. But it's really crazy to see, what kind of rapport he's developed with Derek Carr. I mean, kind of being his safety blanket. And you got Darren Waller coming back. He was back against the Chargers, but I mean, that offense looks a little bit differently. I just think it could be one of those closer type games, and I expect the Raiders to play inspired as they have all season.
I'm glad you picked the Raiders because I really wanted to pick them, but I want to go against you. So I'm going to ride with the Bengals here. And here's my rationale for picking the Bengals. And who knows if I make this an official play, or maybe my mood changes over the next three or so days before the video goes live. But you got a Bengals team and you got a Raiders team. So obviously the Raiders coming off that emotional victory on Sunday against one of their rivals Sunday night. So they obviously are traveling to the East Coast. I mean, it's sort of East Coast in Cincinnati. They're traveling across short week, and you got a Bengals team that basically rested every single starter. So resting every single starter can go in two ways. It could, one, you could come out absolutely flat, which has potential, or two, you'd be well rested. You got basically 2 weeks off, rest your body, and you're ready to go. And I think that week of rest will be really beneficial for him with Joe Mixon. He was nursing some injuries as the season went, at the end of the season. And I just think the Bengals team has too much talent here. When I look at the Chargers and what they struggled, and we look at, this game was close, Chargers versus Raiders. The Chargers are a team that very similar to the Bengals, very up and down, but as the season went on, they really started to fade. Their offensive line kind of wasn't that great. They couldn't run the ball all that well, and that defense struggled. But I really like the Bengals defense. I think they have a lot of heart on their defensive side, and I think their defense is going to step up. They're at home. It's 5.5 points. Don't love laying that many, but I think they get the win by a touchdown here. I think if they can get up early, which we've seen the Bengals do in the past, we've seen them blow out teams, get up to 21-0 leads early in games, and I just don't think the Raiders are capable of coming back. I just think they don't have enough talent on the offensive side if it becomes a one-dimensional passing game. Sure, Darren Waller is good, but he hasn't been healthy the second half of the season. Hunter Renfrow, I love him. I know you love him. I won't throw any shade at him. Zay Jones has been pretty decent, but besides that, they really don't have a whole lot going for him in terms of pass catchers. So give me the Bengals. I'm going to go against you, -5.5.
You just named so many solid offensive weapons, and you're like, they don't have anything going for them.
Yeah, but when you look at the Bengals, they have so much more talent than you look at them against this Chargers team. I would equivalent say these teams are pretty similar, but they got Jamar Chase, they got T. Higgins, they got Tyler Boyd, they got CJ Uzomah. The Chargers were relying on Jared Cook to catch the football, and Jared Cook stinks. And sorry, Jared Cook, if you're watching, no, but he can't catch the ball.
No. See, I can tell you weren't paying attention to the game. They took out Mike Williams. They took out Keenan Allen because they've got the defensive backs to do it. I mean, the Raiders is one of those defenses that, sure, they don't get all that much of attention, but everyone really talks about Max Crosby rushing the passer, which he is really good. But that defensive secondary should not be slept on. They could make life difficult for Joe Burrow. And I'm just saying, I think they have the offensive weapons. You just poo-pooed all those receivers. Stay sleeping on Bryan Edwards. Fine. Do it. I'm excited to go against you, and I'm riding the Raiders, baby.
All right, bet. We'll see how that one goes. And let's move on to the second game on Saturday. Patriots versus the Bills, a trilogy, whatever trilogy. I don't know how to pronounce it. Either way, Patriots, Bills at home, 4-point favorites, over under 43.5. And this is a good one. This is a good one. Obviously, we have, the Patriots beat them the first time in that weird windy game, low scoring. Then the Bills came back and won an emotional game that was in Foxborough. So both teams have won at their opposing stadium or on the road. So we look at this game, the Bills, 4-point favorites. They kind of, they weren't looking great against my Jets. They did end up beating us by 17. Congrats. Man, this is a tough one. This is a tough one. I want to hear your take. I won't necessarily fade you, but I'll go first on the next two games.
Okay,
I want to hear what you got.
Fine. You're looking. No, I appreciate what you're doing. You're looking for some wisdom, right? I'm going to impart some wisdom upon you.
Rain it down on me.
Bills -4 is the play. Hammer it. No, I mean, simply, I'm not trusting, Mac Jones. Look, the first time these two teams faced in that weird windy game, as you mentioned, the Patriots thought they were so funny. They were just like, Mac Jones is not going to throw the ball and we're still going to beat him. It was one of those games that it was just a complete anomaly. But then you saw in Foxborough what the Bills could do in a situation where there wasn't hurricane force winds on the field, right? Josh Allen is just simply too talented. The Patriots will throw some good schemes at him for sure. And you know what? They could frustrate Josh Allen a little bit, but in the end, they just have too much offensive talent. And being at home, again, this is what we talk about. Being at home in the playoffs is very important, right? Patriots, Bill Belichick. Don't bet against Bill Belichick, bro. Fine. Well, I bet against Saban and I won. So
that's what I was doing when I leaned over. I was typing in my comment to not bet against Bill.
I'm betting. Yeah, exactly. And you're such a meme. No, I'm making a fade the GOAT coaches parlay, right? Already cashed the first leg with Georgia spread. Now I'm going with Bill's spread. It's a straight guaranteed winner.
How are you going to pick against the Bucs in our next matchup?
No. I'm only fading coaches here.
We want fade players. Yeah. I hate this, Logan, because this is a squad ride. I am riding with you with the Bills, and that's probably bad juju. But I love you. Were right. You spoke a lot of wisdom, and I don't trust Mac Jones in this game. He has not ended the season that strong, and this Bills defense is no joke. This Bills defense is very good, and you're right. That first game against the Patriots, they just punched him in the mouth. They said, we're just going to run the ball and dominate you, and we'll see exactly what the weather. I was actually typing in to see what the weather was this weekend. I see on Saturday they're getting 10 degrees. That's their high. Now on Sunday they're going to go up to 28. So Monday they got some snow. They got a bunch of snow the rest of the week too. So just Buffalo weather. But this is a team in Buffalo Bills that, they've worked very hard over the past 3-4 seasons to perform in the playoffs. And this is a team that expects to perform, and they have high expectations. I don't think the Patriots have those lofty expectations. I know, the Patriots culture behind them is, this is winning championships. That's what they're all about. But truthfully, I just don't think, they are way ahead of schedule. I don't think they expected to be here, be in the playoffs, or be this great this season. And I think the Bills are going to step up and win this game in a big fashion. I think their defense is going to step up, confuse Mac Jones. They learned in that second game versus the Patriots that, hey, make Mac Jones throw the ball, confuse him. He's a rookie. He's going to make some mistakes. We haven't seen a lot of rookies have success in the playoffs in the past couple seasons. A lot of them don't even make the playoffs for all the that's kind of cracked up for. But I like the Bills here. I like that play. I like it. Let's squad ride it.
All right. What can go wrong? Exactly.
Well, let's move on to the next matchup. I already hinted at it. Sunday, the first game, 1 p.m. We got 3 games on Sunday. First one, Eagles traveling the Buccaneers. Take a -8.5. Bucks are 8.5-point favorites. Over under 49 points. This is the matchup we saw earlier this season when the Bucks went to Philly, went to your home where you are at, and they beat them pretty badly. And then the Eagles got a couple garbage time touchdowns towards the end to make the game look close. And I think they ended up covering with that 2-point conversion. I think losing by 6 points, and the spread was 6.5. But I'm going to start this one out, and I am going to roll with the Buccaneers in this one. And now I know 8.5 points a lot, but it is a lot of points for a reason. The Eagles will be starting Jalen Hurts. And sure, Jalen Hurts, I imagine he didn't play the final week of the season. I think that might show a little bit of rust in this game, because I don't think this Eagles team is as cracked up as people might think they are. They just got absolutely blitzed by the Cowboys, giving up 51 points. And sure, you had a bunch of defensive starters out, but you did show some holes. And I think Tom Brady, this is what he does. He's in the postseason. I think he's ready to just romp on this Eagles team. Now, we did see the Bucs struggle last year against the Washington football team, the first round of the playoffs, but that was a game they were on the road. We know the Bucs this season, they perform their best at home. They're going to be in the heat, and Florida will be like 75, 85 degrees. They're going to be ready to go. You have all the Philly players traveling from the cold. I'm just saying, I think the Tom Brady and the Buccaneers get it done. They just stomped on your Panthers. Not that that was necessarily a big feat, but they need to come out and instill some fear in their opponents, because I think a lot of people might think, this team's vulnerable. They're down Chris Godwin, down Antonio Brown. People forget they still got Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski. Still got a bunch of useful weapons, and I imagine they're probably getting Leonard Fournette back too. So I really like the Buccaneers minus the points here. I know it's a lot to lay. Would not surprise me if the Eagles backdoor this one, but I like the Buccaneers. I think the defense shows up.
Yeah, I mean, that is a lot of points to lay. And again, am I going to try to make a 3-for-3 betting against the goats? No, I'm not really bold enough to take Eagles plus points. Although I have to point out, home field advantage is huge for the Bucs, right? If this game was in Philly, I'm curious what the spread would be. I mean, it'd be really interesting to see, but I mean, it's one of those, I can tell you right now, a Philly winter is not fun. It was in the teens today. That's brutally cold. It's not what Tom Brady, well, Tom Brady is used to that, but I mean, a lot of those Florida players aren't used to that. But I mean, traveling, this one might get a little bit ugly for the Eagles. I'm not picking them with any sort of confidence. You know what? A curious play, and I think what my actual play would be, is the under. I'm just kind of looking at how the Eagles are built. The Eagles are one of those teams that they chew a lot of clock for a field goal, right? You know, you've watched enough Philly football, you know, as have
Yeah.
I. I mean, they have long sustained drives that end in a field goal. And I mean, if you're not going to hit an over a 49, just doing that, and maybe Tom Brady and the Bucs try to get Leonard Fournette more involved. I think he is supposed to be playing, is what I saw. So maybe they're trying to, you know, establish more of the run game, you know, just kind of put Philly away that way. So the under is my actual play for this one, but I can't fault your Bucs spread pick at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of like the under as well because you're right. This Eagles team is not going to throw the ball up and down on the Buccaneers. I mean, the
No.
last game they played each other, Jalen Hurts 115 passing yards. That's all he had to his name. It was not a
Is that
great game.
bad?
It ain't great. And yeah, they kind of got up the field with some pass interference calls, if I remember. And 8.5 points, I don't think I'll actually make that an official play. It's my official lean. I do like the under, though. You're right. You know, this Eagles team is a team that's going to run the ball, and they're going to keep running it probably even if they're down, because that's their identity. And
It's
you
true.
know, I'm curious exactly to see who is back for the Eagles defense, because yeah, they were missing a lot of guys in the final week, but I don't necessarily know how many of those injuries were multi-week injuries. So they're going to need Darius Slay back. He missed week 18. They're going to need all their cornerbacks back, because I would argue that their best part of their defense is probably their secondary, because the secondary is pretty good. It plays pretty deep. It
Yeah.
makes you beat them over the middle with a bunch of different throws. You aren't just going to take the top off the defense, and that's what we saw last. I mean, you saw their first game. Tom Brady completed 34 passes on less than 300 yards. It wasn't really a big game. You know, Leonard
Mhm.
Fournette had 6 catches for 46 yards. Antonio Brown had a decent day, but I imagine that if the Eagles are healthy, they're going to say, you know what, you're going to take 10 minutes. You're going to take 8-10 minutes to get down the field. You're not just going to throw 50-yard bombs on us. They're going to make them too long drives. So I do like
Yeah.
the underplay in this one.
Yeah, I could certainly see it happening. But what's our next matchup? I'm still excited. Let's keep this playoff momentum
This is
going.
an interesting one. Probably one of
Yes.
my favorite game. I'd argue this is probably the game. Raiders and Bengals is a fun game. This is probably my favorite game on the slate. The
Yeah.
49ers traveling to Dallas to take on the Cowboys, who are 3-point favorites, over under 50.5 points. Man, this is an interesting one because you got a 49ers team probably led by Jimmy G. I imagine he's active. He was active last week. Coming back down 17-0 to take down the Rams in their own stadium. A big victory for them. I mean, obviously, you know, it was a great momentum to get into the playoffs. Oh, man, I've been picking against the Cowboys all season long, and I have been wrong a lot of times. What's your take on this one? Because I kind of lean the over. If I'm going to pick a bet, I'm leaning the over. I'm probably
the,
taking the over because I don't trust the Cowboys defense at all.
the over is an interesting play in this one. I'm not touching another total because I'm not all too great at over unders, if I'm being completely honest. But I think, and you know what? I don't know how much of my own money I put on this confidence scale 1 to 10, but I really do think Dallas wins, and I do think they cover, simply because. All right, let's look at matchups, right? You know, who if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, would I put on the 49ers best player, Deebo Samuel? Well, I put Micah Parsons on him. Maybe travel him around, maybe, because they love to use Deebo in a variety of ways, right? They love to use him, you know, in a running back hybrid type role. Well, Micah Parsons can kind of travel on that. And you know what? Dallas is just they playing at home. They have a lot to prove. Dak Prescott, for what you want to say about his regular season ups and downs, he's actually a really good playoff quarterback. He's had experience in that. And I think when all said and done, Dallas is gonna sell out, stop the run, and say, you know what, turn this into a Jimmy G game. You know what? I don't necessarily trust a Jimmy G game. If I'm being completely honest, I think this is one of those games that the Dallas Cowboys finally flex their offense a little bit. They get Cowboy Nation believe in a little bit. And I am taking Dallas in this one. Now, how much of my own money? Not 2 units, definitely not 2 units, but I am feeling the Cowboys in this one.
Yeah, I feel like more favorites win more often than not on wild card weekend, and this is a small enough spread to where I'd be comfortable laying the points with the Cowboys for the reasons you said. I mean, the offense finally turned it around. Granted, it was against like the Eagles' second string guys,
Yeah.
but they turned it around in that final game, scoring over 50 points, which is ridiculous. But you're right, Dak Prescott has reputation for being good in the playoffs, and Jimmy G really doesn't have. Has he played a playoff game? I'm not really 100% sure. I don't remember, but
No,
I just am
yes.
not a I believe yes, he has. Well, yes, he has. He went to the Super Bowl.
He,
I'm an
he
idiot.
went to the Super Bowl, Doc.
Yeah, I'm an
I
idiot.
know it's been that was a weird year, but I know it's been a
It was a
minute.
weird year. But I just don't have a lot of faith in this 49ers offense. And I think Micah Parsons is going to be the difference maker in this one for the reasons
Yeah.
you said. I mean, Trayvon Diggs, he has their interceptions to his name. He has given up a lot of yards. So that's not going to go without being said. But Micah Parsons is a game wrecker. And I think he can wreck this game because if you make this, the Cowboys can flex their offense a little bit, get up in this game, which we've seen. I mean, you saw the Rams get up early, and the 49ers like to start off slow. And I think Micah Parsons could just absolutely be a menace to Jimmy G coming off the edge and just absolutely obliterating him. And I could just see him planting Jimmy G into the ground. And I just think that Dallas defensive line, I think they'll win the game in the trenches. And I think that's what's going to be the difference here. And I think the Cowboys win this one and cover the 3.
Real quick, lastly, the simpleton argument against the Cowboys, which I feel like we might get a lot. It might lean heavy to 49ers, maybe even 49ers money line because of how they finished out the season. They did finish impressively against the Rams, and the Cowboys. You look at the Cowboys, the anti-Cowboys argument is who have they beaten besides their NFC crap opponents, right? They've just been beaten up on bad teams, not looking very impressive. I think they're okay. I think I heard of this. They've only beaten 2 playoff teams, like current playoff teams. One was the Patriots, and that was a crazy game, and the other was the Eagles, obviously an NFC East opponent. So I mean, look at the Dallas Cowboys. That's where a lot of people might choose the simpleton argument of Niners. They don't match up. They match up well versus Dallas. So pick the Niners, but I just think the Cowboys win and cover.
Yeah, we'll see how that game goes. Now, let's move on to Sunday Night Football. Biggest spread on the card. The Steelers, Big Ben, potentially his final game. Who knows? Traveling to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Chiefs 12.5-point favorites. The over-under, 46 points. And I'm going to keep this one simple. I'm taking the Chiefs, and I'm laying the points. These teams just played a couple weeks ago, and they just absolutely spanked them. It was brutal, and this is my fade, Big Ben. I am tired of watching him, and I want to see him. No offense, Big Ben. I love him, love what he's done, love his career, whatever. He is so bad. It is so bad to watch. I don't know how Steelers fans do it because it's not like he's throwing it 25 yards. You're getting 3 yards out routes or slants or dump offs every single time. And it just sucks to watch. And so I think the Chiefs kind of played with their food last week against the Broncos, still winning it out, getting the 2 seed, whatever. I think they come in and they just are at home. And the Steelers offense, I have no faith in them to be able to move the ball. I just don't. I don't think they were happy with the winning season. They had to sweat that tie out at the eventual Raiders game. I just get lost, Steelers. I'm sorry, Steelers fans. I love Deontay Johnson. I'll probably take his over in receptions here, but man, they stink.
The amount of disrespect you just launched towards the Pittsburgh Steelers and towards Big Ben.
I think their defense is good, and that's their only chance of keeping this game close is if their defense plays well. But they just got exposed by the Chiefs offense just a couple weeks ago. And maybe I'm being a simpleton, and a lot of people, I'm sure the squares will be all over the Chiefs. They'll be like, they just won by 25, and maybe that's me or whatever it may be. But
yeah, you are a square. You're a square. You're a square.
You see my
spread
record. My spread record, spreads and over unders record, I believe was exactly 49-49 on the season. So I guess maybe I'm 50%. I'm exactly 50%. So flip a coin.
Yeah. No. Okay. So look at this one. Are you saying, Logan? Are you bold enough to take the Steelers with points? You know what? I am bold enough simply because I just don't think they're going to let Big Ben get blown out in prime time like this. I don't know how it's going to happen. Don't know the narratives. Could it be a big Najee Harris game? Sure, why not, right? The Chiefs have shown some vulnerability to stopping the run at times, right? The Chiefs secondary has been really good. They'll probably lock up Deontay Johnson. They'll probably, someone do a pretty good job on Claypool. Big Freiermuth game? I don't know. I'm just I'm just saying, like, it's got to come from somewhere, right? I just think it's not as easy as beating a team twice in convincing fashion. And I look, I mean, what happened with Alabama, Georgia? I always say it's hard to beat a team twice in a year convincingly, right? You know what? They might squeak it out, right? It could still be Chiefs win by 10 or, touchdown field goal. But 12.5 is just a lot of points. Big Ben is just playing for his career. He wants to end it on a good note. So I'll take Steelers. Not a ton of confidence in me, but I do like the square nature that you're picking Chiefs with.
Well, enjoy watching Big Ben with your money on the line. Watching. Hike.
No, I don't want it.
Yeah, no, it's going to be terrible. Let's move on to the final game, and then we'll get out of here. Monday Night Football. We'll have an individual video on this one. Probably have a player prop, a spreader over-under pick, and a same-game parlay. Cardinals traveling, taking on the Rams, -4, over-under 49.5 points. We got another trilogy. Two teams that have played each other, both split them, both won in each other's stadiums. Rams are at home, where you could argue they might have been pumping in some crowd noise on a Sunday. At least that's what the 49ers were saying, which I don't know if that's necessarily true or not. This is an exciting one. I'll set the stage for you. Obviously, Kyler Murray. I believe this is his first. I know I've been an idiot with Jimmy G. I forgot he went to the Super Bowl. Kyler Murray, this is his first career NFL playoff start. So props to him and the Cardinals for making it. They had a tumultuous end of the season after starting so hot, and then finish at 11-6. So not losing a lot of the final games, but got Matthew Stafford, who has absolutely struggled over the past couple weeks, and they obviously just blew that game against the 49ers in Week 18. Still won the division because the Cardinals lost to the Seahawks. But either way, take it away. I can give my pick first, but you can give your takeaway immediately.
All right. You know what? I'll just go first, and I'll impart some wisdom on you. Rams -4 is the play here. The Rams are going to win this one, and they're going to put the Cardinals away. For what I always said, Cardinals are a fraud. Rams have been a fraud at sometimes too, but you know what? When Stafford's not throwing pick sixes, they're pretty decent. So Stafford, just don't revert to your own Detroit self.
Don't know what to do.
If you're listening to the audio only and you can't see my look, I'm looking directly in the camera at Matt Stafford. Your jerseys aren't red, right? You never were red. Well, you were a Georgia Bulldog. They were red back then. But I mean, truthfully, you know what? This comes down to, do I trust Kyler Murray and his little short miniature self to be able to throw passes that don't get batted at the line of scrimmage, to be able to just not run around in a figure-8 style? I mean, you can picture it right now, being chased by Von Miller. Yeah, I mean, no, I don't trust the Cardinals. And Cliff Kingsbury is one of the flakiest coaches I've ever seen. At least Sean McVay has something to put on his resume with getting them to a Super Bowl with a lot less talented. I mean, Jared Goff. But look at this one. I think Sean McVay and that coaching staff more proven, playing at home a little bit. Yeah, Cardinals aren't all they're cracked up to be.
Yeah, I can see. I'm curious where the public lies on this one, because I have this strong feeling that they're going to lie a lot on the Rams. On the Rams. I think the Rams are going to get a lot of the public bet for the reason that you said. And I'm sure they came up with an egg on Sunday against played well and then lost in overtime. But you're right. This Cardinals team is kind of a fraud. They really don't have a lot to hang their hats on over the second half of the season, have not looked good. And that's why I'm taking the Cardinals here, plus the 4. And I think they have a chance to win this game outright, because I don't have much faith in Matthew Stafford. I love Matthew Stafford. I hope I'm totally wrong, but he has really struggled. And when you guard, all you have to do is to stop this Rams offense. Just guard Cooper Kupp. It might be harder said than done, or easier said than done, but you just have to stop him, and that offense is going to struggle. Now, they have some decent success in the playoffs under Sean McVay. Now, obviously, they've gone to a Super Bowl. Last season, they won the wild card against the Seattle Seahawks before losing in the divisional against the Packers. But either way, I just think this Cardinals team, they're playing with house money right now. I don't think they have anything to lose. I think the Rams so much on their shoulders, so much pressure, so much Super Bowl aspirations. Yeah. This is a team, and the Cardinals, they don't care. Sure, they care that they want to win this, but they haven't been to the playoffs before. Sure, they might have a little bit of nerves, and maybe you want to ride with the Rams, or maybe the first quarter under for the Cardinals or something like that, but they really have nothing to lose here. If they lose this game, it's not really going to be, they can chalk it up to, we're an inexperienced team playing a team that has a good amount of playoff success and playoff experience, and they're playing against a team that's been to the Super Bowl in the past, and they're playing as a team that hasn't looked all that great. So I think Kyler Murray playing with a little bit of house money here, and I think that might get the job done, and I think they can cover this points, whether it's a backdoor cover, whether they're down by 10 at the end of the game and they get a garbage time touchdown to the Antone Wesley or whatever his name is, call him a shot. I like the Cardinals plus the 4 solely because I think the Rams will have a lot of the spread picks.
No.
And the Rams, and you look at the Cardinals, they play so much better on the road for whatever reason. So yeah, I love them on the road.
Okay, yeah. You said a whole lot of nothing there. I'm just gonna sum it up for you guys. He said, "Oh, just as long as you stop Cooper Kupp." Well, no team's been able to really do it. I mean, Cooper Kupp has just run wild all over the league. You want to focus coverage on him? That's fine. He'll still somehow be open. The Rams are good enough to squeak by the Cardinals. Cover the 4. I do believe they're going to. Actually, you know what? I want to alt spread this to like 14. You know what? The Cardinals are so bad. I don't know how you take them with +4. This is a solely fade the public bet, assuming that they are on Rams, which who knows? Maybe they are not. But you gave me nothing to sway me even a little bit towards Cardinals. Sean McVay is an experienced coach. Cliff Kingsbury, not playoff experienced.
I don't know if we're getting DeAndre Hopkins back, for the record.
Exactly. That could be huge.
If he's back, I think that could change the tide a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just have this feeling that the Kyler Murray, we always see this random upset on, wild card weekend. And I imagine if the public is on the Rams, I think the Cardinals have to cover because this is a Monday night game. Everyone's going to have their eyes on it. Everyone's going to be betting it. Vegas said not so fast. Give me the Cardinals plus the points and a little bit of sprinkle on the money line. I don't know. I'm just calling my shot. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah, well,
they could easily get blown out. Look, the Cardinals have not looked good over the second half of the season. They haven't. And I would love to see Hopkins back today. But I just think this team with Kyler Murray, I just think they got something that just might surprise some people. And maybe I'm totally wrong. And I'll come on to the podcast next week and say, you know what? I deserve that.
But I want to clown this.
No,
this is a clown nose bet. No, this is we have to have a fun wager. This is a clown nose bet. If Rams end up losing outright, you know what? Clown nose for me.
Okay, I'll do it when we talk about the Rams next week. If they do make it, which we won't be, because you'll be talking about. You'll be wearing a clown nose while we recap the Rams next, or the Cardinals next game when they win outright.
All right.
Either way, any final closing thoughts for the end of the podcast? We just crossed the hour mark.
Yeah, no. If you guys have been listening to this episode, you guys are the real MVPs. I love you guys, and mash that subscribe button for us. Playoff football is here. And no better channel to cover it than us and Austin with his guaranteed winning videos.
Yeah, we've been on a pretty good run in the NFL. Hopefully we can continue that over the playoff season, and hopefully we can end the regular or the whole season on a pretty good note. But I appreciate you guys for tuning into the podcast. It's our longest one yet, but we appreciate you guys for always submitting your questions because we love to answer them. Love to kind of have you guys learn a little bit more about us, have us talk about a bunch of different things. We don't want to we know in about a month or so we're going to be talking about a whole different things than the NFL because it'll be over for the most part. So we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Maybe next week, the next time we see you, we might have 20,000 subscribers. Go make that happen. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. And this has been Austin for Logan. We'll see you guys again next week. And let's hope that we make some money this weekend in the NFL. Drop your NFL predictions down below. Maybe even show us who you think guys winning the Super Bowl. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. It's been the Call on Our Shot podcast, episode 20. Catch you guys next week. Peace.